Welcome to Beyond the Coverage. I'm Chris Horner. Today is Tour of Flanders and Tadej Pogačar pre-show here. Now, what has the Slovenian been doing wrong during his 2-year experience of Belgium Classics? Remember, last year was the start of his Belgium campaign, trying to win monument races and trying to win Belgium semi-classics up there. So what does the Slovenian need to do in order to win Tour of Flanders and add a third monument to his resume? He has Liège-Bastogne-Liège already there, and of course he has Lombardy already added to his resume, but there's 5 monuments and Tadej Pogačar wants a third. This Sunday starts Tour of Flanders, 273 kilometers, so it's right up there with Milano-San Remo when we're talking about lengths and difficulties. But when we're talking about Flanders, it's a whole lot harder than anything in the legs have ever experienced when you compare it to Milan-San Remo. So Tadej Pogačar's got a shot of winning up here at Tour of Flanders. I think better than he does even at Milan-San Remo. But he has 2 problems because Wout van Aert just got done winning E3 Saxo Bank. And Mathieu van der Poel just got done winning Milano-San Remo. So we know those 3 riders, Tadej Pogačar, Mathieu van der Poel, and Wout van Aert, are the 3 big favorites. Now, last season in 2022 was when Tadej Pogačar said he's ready to start doing some of the Belgium Classics. And he started up there with Dwars-Door-Vlaanderen, where he had some problems as he was trying to close gaps. Now, at Dwars-Door-Vlaanderen, I believe if I remember correctly, when those gaps started, he got caught at the bottom of the climb getting tied up, so he was starting like 40th position. But once the group went away with Mathieu van der Poel and with Team Ineos up there, Tom Pidcock, my man Victor Campenos was up there. What's happening with Tadej Pogačar is he's panicking and trying to bridge the gap. At that moment, once you got tied up at the bottom of the climb there and those favorites went away, you have to hit the abort button of Plan 1. Plan 1, of course, was to stay with Mathieu van der Poel and the big-time favorites when he was up there racing, but they've already went away, and we still have some time, some kilometers left before the finish of the race, and other teams have missed the split. So Tadej Pogačar needs to back off, hit the abort button, and erase Plan A and go to Plan B. Plan B is going to be when you miss the favorites, you have to rely on other teams, make them do some work, and try to bring the favorites back later. Now, we fast forward a little bit more in 2022, and we go up to the Tour of Flanders. What went wrong for UAE Team Emirates at Tour of Flanders? Well, a break of about 10 guys plus or minus a couple went up the road early. No problem. That's bike racing 101. Then with 90 kilometers to go, another large-size break went up the road of around 10 riders. And it had Jumbo-Visma and Alpecin Phoenix in there, the 2 big-time favorites of Mathieu van der Poel and Jumbo-Visma in that group. Again, UAE Team Emirates panic at this moment massively, and they try to send Matteo Trentin across. Now, the Italian rider can't close the gap, and he comes all the way back. Remember, when Matteo Trentin's trying to close that gap going full gas, and then he has to shut the gas down, during that whole time, he could have been on the front of the group there, holding that gap steady, waiting for other teams to come on the front, and Tadej Pogačar could go across to that group later. Instead, Tadej Pogačar loses the force of Matteo Trentin because of that effort he does trying to go across the group. That means when he comes back, Tadej Pogačar has to reset, put his guys on the front, get some other teams on the front, which is what happened, but that would have happened regardless, right? And what was Matteo Trentin going to do up there in the second group that was 10-plus guys chasing down another group that's 10-plus guys? Would have been better to keep him there by Tadej Pogačar. Number 1 rule on the butterfly effect, and up here I'll extend it up, of course, to Beyond the Coverage, is that you keep your team together for as long as you can when you're the number 1 favorite in the race. You keep your team together, you have them drill it and make it as hard as they possibly can for as long as they can near the finish of the race. Not the beginning of the race, but the finish of the race. Not like Trek Segafredo did this year in 2023 and EF Education did in the last 2 Belgium Classics, but you keep them together into the hard part here at Tour of Flanders. Now, Tour of Flanders at 273 kilometers is a distance of the race where you only need to have 1, maybe 2 big explosions at the right time if you're Tadej Pogačar, get the gap on everyone, and then go all the way to the finish here at Tour of Flanders on those last 15 kilometers of flat roads without Mathieu van der Poel on your wheel or Wout van Aert. If you reach that flat section, the last 15K of Tour of Flanders, with Wout van Aert or Mathieu van der Poel on your wheel, you're probably going to lose Tour of Flanders. Could he win in a sprint? It's always possible. There's no doubt about that. But most likely, he won't. And all you have to do is look at the cycling stats where they rate the weights of each rider in the top 10 finishing the 5 monument races. And when you look at that rating there, you see Paris-Roubaix, Tour of Flanders, they're all about 74 kilos of weight in the top 10 there. And you start looking at Lombardia and LBL, and all of a sudden you're at 62 and 64 kilos of weight of the guys that win. So you're asking a lot out of Tadej Pogačar to come here to Tour of Flanders and win. Now, when I was racing, I always did the stage races in the big mountains. I loved LBL and I loved Lombardia, but I was a lightweight guy. So the idea of coming and doing Tour of Flanders never appealed to me. I have done the course a couple times, but it never appealed to me to come back just because of that reason, that 74 kilos that these classic specialists have, like Wout van Aert and Mathieu van der Poel, allows them on a 2-kilometer climb to be incredibly explosive. So when you're talking a smaller, lighter weight rider like Tadej Pogačar, the way he's performing, especially when we look at E3 Saxo Bank, his last race here in 2023 at the Belgium Classics, it's unbelievable what the Slovenian's doing and how much pressure he's putting these 74 kilo riders under when he's attacking going up these climbs, because at around 65 kilos, no one should be able to hurt a 70-kilo rider that's at the top of his game in the Belgium Classics. Now, when we get into E3 Saxo Bank, already with about 80 kilometers to go, Tadej Pogačar is out of position and about 30 place back when there's some pressure put at the front, and he gets split off and has to bridge that gap as they hit the Tannenberg. Once they hit the Tannenberg, that's when all the attacks start. Tadej Pogačar has to go from about 25th position at the bottom of the climb, pass all those riders and close the gap up to the front there. And the whole time at this moment going up to Tannenberg, when you look over the top, he has Quick Step's Casper Asgreen with him, along with Mads Pedersen from Trek Segafredo. At this moment, you know Pseudo Quick Step is going to chase 100%, and UAE Team Emirates have other riders back there in the 3rd and 4th group that when it comes back together, he'd have UAE Team Emirates to ride on the front to bring back the group up front. Instead, Tadej Pogačar panics. He stays on the gas. He will close that gap, but that's big-time bullets. That's about 5 kilometers, all-out effort with 80 kilometers to go when no one at the front has done anywhere remotely near the kind of effort that Tadej Pogačar just did. Now, we'll look at E3 Saxo Bank some more, because as the groups come back together before the Stationberg, Tadej Pogačar has one teammate, Rui Oliveira, that's in that group, and we're coming up to the Stationberg. That flat section just before, there's a bunch of attacks from that group, while 3 riders were up the road, of course, with Jumbo-Visma, Albacete de Koenig, and Mate Mohoric from Bahrain Victorious. A strong group, but we got a lot of distance to go still, 60 kilometers. Rui Oliveira makes a big-time mistake, team mistake for Tadej Pogačar here as he's covering the attacks. I can tell you by experience, when you're one of the favorites in the race and you got teammates up the road or you have teammates behind, if you're isolated, you have to still cover the attacks that are happening back there. So when the cameras are up front there with Rui Oliveira covering the attacks, I can guarantee you Tadej Pogačar's not getting necessarily a free ride. Is he in the wind pulling hard? Probably not, but is he hurting, covering all the accelerations and attacks? Certainly he is, and we're coming up to the Stationberg. Instead, a better tactic from UAE Team Emirates, have Rui Oliveira on the front, drilling it into the Stationberg, make the right, start the cobble climb. Tadej Pogačar sit in second wheel. All Rui has to do is about 100 meters up the climb. When Mathieu van der Poel attacks on the right side of the road around the Pseudo Quick-Step rider, and while Van Aert's gapped off, Tadej Pogačar would have been right at the front and just boom, straight over, no gap to jump across to. Now, all of a sudden, he's in that front move without having to expend the same kind of energy he did at this year's E3 Saxo Bank, when he instead got trapped in the middle and had to chase all the way over with a Nathan Van Hooijdonk at the front, who looked back over his shoulder, saw Wout van Aert coming and punched it at the top of the climb, which means Tadej Pogačar has to go even harder and down the descent before he catches on. Tadej Pogačar has made lots of mistakes, and his UAE Team Emirates directors are at fault for it just as much as Tadej Pogačar is, because the Slovenian's a young kid and shouldn't know how to race tactically perfect under every scenario, especially when you've been that strong throughout your career where you could just jump across gaps and still win from the front. But you can't do that at Tour of Flanders because, as you see from the pro cycling stats, it's 74, 75 kilo guys who are the big time favorite when we're talking about Flanders and Paris-Roubaix. But yes, Tadej Pogačar can still win. Now, if I'm looking at the 273 kilometer course here on Sunday at Flanders, and I'm the director sportif for UAE Team Emirates, I'm saying we stay out of trouble the first 80 miles, 130 kilometers of the race, which are basically flat. And then when the bergs start, that's when we have to keep Tadej Pogačar always close to Mathieu van der Poel or Wout van Aert. You don't necessarily have to be on the wheel of both, but you have to pick one. And if I have to pick, I'm going to say Mathieu van der Poel, because Wout van Aert's Jumbo-Visma squad is so strong. If they get a rider up in the break, they might be happy with a Christophe Laporte in that front group or a Thies Benoot, and then Jumbo-Visma won't pull from behind. But when you look at Alpecin de Koenig, whoever they have in that front group, unless it's a Søren Kragh Andersen rider or some ability of that, which they don't have another rider that could ride as good as Søren Kragh Andersen, they won't be satisfied with anyone in that group. So as we get into the bergs, when I look at Tim Wellens, I think Tim Wellens has to be the rider that covers Søren Kragh Andersen, and Tadej Pogačar has to stay with Mathieu van der Poel or possibly a Wout van Aert. But as I said, Jumbo-Visma will probably have someone up in that front group. So I would pick Mathieu van der Poel because Alpecin de Koenig most likely won't. Now, he has to stay calm to the last 40 kilometers, 50 kilometers to go. You make Wout van Aert, Tadej or Mathieu van der Poel do most of the work on the climbs to make the race hard. For sure, the other teams will start attacking early regardless. So make those teams do the work. UAE Team Emirates, you sit back. If it's dangerous, you ride the front for Tadej Pogačar before the climbs, but do not accelerate on the climbs to make the climbs difficult. Make the other riders make the climbs difficult until we get into that 40 kilometers to go. When all of a sudden we have the last 3-4 bergs start, that's when Tadej Pogačar can light it up, because he has 25 kilometers worth of 4 bergs to be able to drop everyone, and then 15 kilometers thereabouts of flat roads into the finish of Tour of Flanders. But when he gets into the last 15 kilometers of flat roads, he has to be solo. There's no reason to come to the line with Mathieu van der Poel or Wout van Aert. The Slovenian has to be solo, or at least be with someone other than those two riders, and preferably no one from Alpecin de Koenig or Jumbo-Visma getting a free ride on the Slovenian's wheel. It's going to be a tall order for Tadej Pogačar to win when we're talking about 65 kilos at Tour of Flanders. But can it be done? The Slovenian has broken all records. He is the next Eddie Merckx of bike racers. There is no doubt about it. The Slovenian is an amazing character, and it would not be a surprise if he wins Tour of Flanders. But if he does, he has to be perfect. The team, number one rule on the butterfly effect and beyond the coverage, stay with Tadej Pogačar. Make the race as hard as it possibly can when we get into the last few bergs, so Tadej Pogačar can launch and drop a Wout van Aert and a Mathieu van der Poel before you go over the last berg here at Tour of Flanders, or it's going to be a tall order to be able to beat those guys in the sprint. If you can't get rid of them and you have 15 kilometers of flat roads and you're Tadej Pogačar, don't pull at all. Don't pull at all. Pull Alberto Contador move where you want the win or nothing at all. If there's one thing about Alberto Contador that I loved and 100% respected, the Spaniard never raced for second place. So Tadej Pogačar, when I saw him working at E3 Saxo Bank all the way into the last 250 meters to go, he rode the last 1.2 kilometers on the front with 2 sprinters on his wheel. If I'm watching that, the only thing that was popping through my mind is, man, this kid needs to be Alberto Contador at this moment. And during the last 14 kilometers of flat section here at Tour of Flanders, if you haven't been able to dislodge those two guys, Wout van Aert and Mathieu van der Poel, let off the gas, make them do everything, cause chaos, have groups from the back come back up to you, so there's multiple numbers of riders up there to cause chaos all over. Do not pull anything back. Make Mathieu van der Poel or Wout van Aert pull it back unless you can cleanly jump across to an attack without either of those riders on your wheel, so you have a shot of winning here at Tour of Flanders. I hope you guys enjoyed my coverage here of the Tour of Flanders 2023. Hope Tadej Pogačar puts on a show, which we all know he will. Make sure you guys like and subscribe because there's more editions coming. I'll see you guys real soon on Beyond the Coverage.